Live, it's alive.
And we're starting this episode off with that wonderful image. It is Halloween, so we're keeping that in. We're live. And, of course, as always, I am Joe Ryder Kictanello, joined with me by my co-host, Matt Hughes.
Hello.
And we are joined by one of the oldest members of the UFS community.
Ouch.
Terms of age, but he has been with UFS, quite frankly, the longest out of any of us. Behind the keyboard, we have Mr. Tom Kohler.
Yeah. The oldest and most. You see, you should say most tenured. So that doesn't mean you can't.
This way. He has senior majority over the majority of the UFS community.
That's probably true. So
he was there through the good, the bad, the really bad, the even worse, and then the good again.
Well, I would say there was a point I didn't have anything to do with a certain amount of sets. Like for instance, when Sabretooth was shuttered and the game was shipped off to Fantasy Flight, we had a year of sets to go, and I want to say set 8 just came out or something along those lines, and we had a bunch of sets after that were all lined up, and so I had like 3, maybe 4 sets after set 8 that I had something to do with, and then after that, nothing. So I didn't have anything to do with Tekken, nothing to do with Shadow War, outside of like I started the concept artwork for Shadow War, helped kind of build the world, which they totally trashed, like, which is fine because I looking back on it, it was not obviously something that I was geared to do at the time. So, but yeah, so anyway, that's that.
No, we'll ask these questions. So
I'm sure.
We got these wonderfully approved questions from.
Yes,
wonderfully approved.
They're what we like to call slow pitch, towards.
I wanted to throw curveballs, but Nathan wouldn't allow, so he gave us pre-approved questions.
I'll tell you this: you can ask the pre-approved questions, and if you want, you can ask curveballs. If I don't feel comfortable saying something, I'll just say I don't feel comfortable saying it. But
what's your favorite color?
Green.
There we go.
Yeah, see? Right out of the bam, the hard questions.
So,
in fact, I'm even wearing green right here, mind you. Got to represent my Oregon, stuff, even though I'm not in Oregon at the moment. It's always in the heart, though. So.
All right, so we got
the tree huggers.
Tom Kohler. Who is Tom Kohler?
Kohler, not Collier. Kohler. There's no I in that.
It's okay. No one ever remembers how to pronounce it correctly the first couple times. Kohler.
Kohler. The bold look of Kohler. There's even commercials that say my name properly.
Well, we had a Chanella's. That was the closest I got to my last name. Chanella's Pizza. Ooh, that was a rough time to be in elementary school.
My last name's generic and boring.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's a good thing and a bad thing with being a Kohler as a last name. Number one, it's a good thing because whenever I walk into a bathroom, there's a big chance that I can just tell people to get away from the urinal because it's got my name all over it. So, however, it also in the reverse way. People are like, oh, like the crap company, and I'm like, no, we make fiction. Never mind, just go, and so I mean, it's a good and bad.
So, all right, who are you?
So who am I? All right, well, my name is Thomas Kohler. I am currently let's see, I'm kind of in transition, but basically I'm being promoted to the vice president of Jasco Games. This point.
Ooh, fancy.
Fancy title. Yeah. Before that, I was the creative director with Sabretooth Games. I started off as a graphic designer, and I got eventually promoted to art director. So, and then obviously there was the time I did not get brought on to Fantasy Flight, although my ex-wife at the time was absolutely 100% opposed to moving to Minnesota, so it probably wouldn't have happened anyway. And then so after that, I worked a couple different jobs. I worked for a convent for 4 years in their communications department. They have 5 schools and a nursing home, so just in case anyone was wondering, I didn't just do graphics for nuns. And then I also I worked for Pokemon for a little bit. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was doing production design. I did localization for the card games and packaging. And it was actually kind of nice because my boss, Ginny, she when we were interviewing, she's like, "So can you show us some stuff?" And I pulled out all the UFS cards that I did, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you know what a white plate is?" I was like, "Of course I know what a white plate is." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so amazing! Like, we'll hardly have to train you." I was like, "Yeah, exactly. See, awesome."
Yes, I remember the Sabretooth Fallout scenario. That was such a shame that thing happened to you guys.
Well, I mean, I get it. Games Workshop at the time was really looking at, they were in a rough spot financially, and because oddly enough, they have like a downturn. It's almost like clockwork. Someone was showing me a graph, and like every 7 years, they just have a weird fall off, and then they come back up, and it's no big deal. But they were, at the time, they were really trying to streamline and just focus on their main core lines, and Sabretooth and UFS did not fit into that scenario. And Fantasy Flight, as it was told to me, Fantasy Flight approached them about getting Talisman, and they really wanted Talisman. And basically, Games Workshop said, "Well, how about we give you every single game that isn't a miniatures game?" So, like for instance, they would get Talisman, Dark Future, anything that they wanted, but they couldn't get Space Hulk, they couldn't get Blood Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. So they, no Necromunda, no Mordheim, and they were like, yes, and then they were like, and UFS comes with it. So, I mean, it was a crappy deal. It was a crappy deal for everyone. I felt that it was especially crappy for me because I had just gotten married and moved my wife out there, and we had just bought a house, and 6.5, 7 months later, I'm out of a job, and find myself moving back to Oregon, and so that was kind of a fun deal. But I mean, it is what it is. I wouldn't trade it, for the world. I mean, while I'm not a huge fan of Memphis in a place to live, it's just not. It's very different from where I grew up.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to live if you're not living in the right area of Memphis.
It's true. It can be. I lived mostly on the eastern fringe when I lived there. I lived basically on the border of Memphis and Germantown for the first year and a half or so. In the second year, I lived in Collierville, which is a suburb just past Germantown. And it was and those were both very nice places. It was definitely not the rough neighborhood, so to speak. And funny story about Sabretooth. There was a time that we decided, because of course we were connected directly to the battle bunker in the Memphis factory. We're doing a Blood Bowl tournament for funds, and Seth Morgan, who was one of the designers for the games, one of the game designers, we're playing a game, and he picks up the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, oh, wow, all right, okay, well, cool, just keep me posted, thanks." Goes off the phone, and I was like, "What's the deal? Who is that?" And he's like, "Oh, that was my wife." I was like, "Really? Like, what's Brandy got to say?" And he's like, "Oh, they hauled a body out of the pond behind our apartment."
Jeez.
And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's like the second one." I was like, "Oh, didn't realize it was so just casual there, So
It's a Tuesday, pond diving.
Yeah, that's worst day in your life for me. It was Tuesday. Anyway.
God bless you, Raj Julius.
Yes. So anyway, yeah, and I would say the probably I mean, as far as everything goes, like I said, I would totally do it over again. I mean, moving to Tennessee really kind of got me out of my shell. I had lived very close to home, no further than 3 hours before, basically most of my life. And so being that far away from family and friends and everything really kind of got me to mature and grow a bit more than I had it before. So I mean, it was a good thing for me. Not to mention, it got me firmly into the industry. I had worked freelance for a couple companies here and there. In fact, that's how I got the job at Sabretooth. But the great thing about the game industry is that once you're in, you can, if you want, you can stay in. And I really enjoy the game company stuff. No matter what, you always come home and like, yeah, I had a terrible day, but I made games for a living, so yeah, it's all good.
As we mentioned earlier, in a lame attempt to make fun at you, you've been in UFS for a very long time. Exactly how long have you been in the game?
Well, as a card, I was in from the beginning. I started playing UFS somewhere about 3.5 months before it actually came out. I actually remember sitting down and playing games with set 1 and 2 cards, because we had set 1 and 2 initially in the bag right away, and I was playtesting with Dave Freeman and Seth Morgan, both the designers, and basically I started playing then, and it was kind of funny because in terms of Street Fighter, like at the time I was a huge Vega fan, and I was all upset that Vega wasn't coming out until set 2. I understood it, like whatever, you've got the 4 bosses, and we weren't playable until Championship Edition, but the so I actually had to, and that's not entirely true, because I started playing Sagat, and because Sagat's pretty mighty. I really like Sagat. So, but I was building Sagat and Vega decks, a couple months before the game actually came out, and then this is one of those things. Like at Sabretooth, they just gave you cards, like when
they love giving out cards.
Well, no. It goes even beyond that. So, like, you would get a sleeve of cards where it would be like 6 cut sheets all in this just card sleeve, and they would just give it to you. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh, sweet! Like, I've got 4 of every common or 12 of every common and 4 of every uncommon, and now I've got 4 of every rare, or 4 of every ultra rare, and 12 of every rare. And so that, like, it was interesting because we couldn't sell the cards. That was, first of all, unethical, and second of all, it's company policy. So we'd be at like Gen Con or Origins trading people uncommons for rares because we just didn't have that many. So, but it was awesome. So eventually, I mean, we really got into it, and we had a lot of fun playing in staff. Like a lot of us would not go out to lunch and stay in and munch on our lunches while we played cards and stuff like that. So it was pretty awesome. There's a lot more. There were a lot more people at Sabretooth.
There we go.
I'm sorry?
No, we froze for just a second. Keep on going.
Yeah, so I want to say at the height of Sabretooth, we had maybe 17 people total working for us, if I remember correctly, because we had like 6 salespeople, 2 organized play, and HR, and office manager, all that other jazz. So, and while a lot of them didn't play, like, I loved Anya to death, and she was never going to pick up cards. But a lot of us did actually play, and people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to play played, and it was kind of nice. And we had some awesome things. Like there was a tournament where people got to submit decks, and the crappy thing about that, and you can still find the video on YouTube, and I'm a whole lot heavier in that video. It sucks, but we had a staff tournament where people submitted decks that we played, and then certain people got to choose who they wanted. And there was one character who was like heads and tails way above the rest. Just, and we're all like geared up, and then Amy gets first pull, so she immediately pulls that deck, and we're all like, oh. And I got Lizard Man, and the deck wasn't terrible, it just wasn't quite on the same level, and I had to like sit there and trash talk in a YouTube video, and I just don't do that very well. So I was like, yeah, Gary's going down or something. That's just terrible. Anyway, don't look for it. It's terrible.
I think I remember watching that years ago.
Probably.
You got me beat.
I'm sorry?
I said I remember that event scenario.
Oh yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. That was those were good times.
You've got me beat on being in this game by about 3 months.
Yeah,
because I was playing with Penny Arcade like the day it came out.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually I was employed by Sabretooth when they launched the game for Penny Arcade, But I did not. I didn't actually do anything for Penny Arcade. That was actually a previous designer. Interestingly enough, so Sabretooth used to be located in Seattle. It was a brainchild of several other people who eventually sold it to Games Workshop and then did not go when they moved the game out to, or the company out to Memphis. And the original UFS design and stuff like that was actually done, at least as far as I know, it was done by a guy named Ben Misnier, who actually works, I think, for Privateer Press right now. He actually completely jumped. He doesn't do graphic design anymore. He's a miniature sculptor now. So kind of a change of pace. But yeah, so I mean, I should have just about everybody who plays the game, because I don't believe anyone at Saber or who worked for Sabretooth still plays the game. You know, not even Mr. Horvat. So even though
I thought Steve still played every now and then, but I guess not.
Well, I don't. I have no idea. I haven't really had a big conversation with Steve. You know, I try to talk to him every now and then at Gen Con, but you know, he's a busy guy. So we generally chit-chat about X-Wing for a brief moment, like, oh, you must be loving the whole Star Wars thing. And he'll be like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, when are you going to make a Star Destroyer? I mean, I know it's not really going to. He's like, no, we can't make it. Like, you know, the Tantive 4 was fine, but, you know, the Star Destroyer, I mean, it wouldn't even fit on a table. I'm like, okay, I get that. So maybe one. I don't know. Then they came out with Armada, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I like the dogfighting aspect. I don't need a fleet battle.
All right, so this is actually something I asked Jason a long time ago. Since you're creative director, you may be able to answer this a bit better than he.
Okay.
We all know, and this is something that's played UFS for a long time, is set releases.
Sure.
UFS has had issues with setting a solid release schedule. Now, we asked Jason about this a little bit ago, and I want to see if you can go a bit more in depth on what happens during a production cycle and how the releasing works.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of interesting because I remember I was only somewhat involved for Red Horizon and Tides of Vengeance. I did a lot of the layout of text and creation of the packaging and whatnot, but I wasn't. I didn't have, and actually even really like probably the key. So what happens with the production cycle? And I don't know what Jason told you guys because I didn't watch that episode, but basically what it starts with is that I usually get a list of characters and cards and what those cards are going to be, and usually what the title is. Sometimes I won't necessarily get the title. In the past, it's been better, you know, since I've been here. But like when I was at Sabretooth, you would get this thing where it was like, we are going to have Guile, and then we're going to have Guile Attack 1, Guile Attack 2, Guile Attack 3, and you know, eventually you're like, okay, well, what are these attacks going to be? Because they're all based off of moves, so of course they have to go in and find out, like, you know, is it going to be Sonic Boom, or is it going to be a Flash Kick, or is it just going to be a spinning back fist, or something along those lines? So, you know, I had to wait for that, and then once I get all of that, this is where it gets really interesting, because especially since we do licensed stuff, especially, you know, specifically for Mega Man and Darkstalkers, and when we had it back at Sabretooth Street Fighter, there's a fair amount of comics that are created for those series. And while Darkstalkers doesn't have a continuing comic series, which is sad, because, you know, I really would enjoy having more.
It was a good comic when they did it.
It was. I want to say they only have like 8 or 10 issues or something like that, but it was pretty good. But we
had a lot of gaps for the story.
Yeah, no, I had a great time with it. But I mean, most fighting game stories are just ridiculous. Like, you know, oh, I'm going to create an army of soldiers that are really good at street fighting, but they can't catch bullets. I don't know. Anyway.
And then there's Blaze Blues. That one's ridiculous.
Oh, good lord, we don't even go into that.
So, but anyway, you know, so what generally happens is I will go through comics and I will pick out pictures that are, or frames, comic frames specifically, that I can use as artwork for the set. Mostly because it really helps save on cost. And obviously, I mean, the more we save on cost, the more we can not have to raise prices on consumers and all that. So I go through and I literally try to make a third of the set, if at all possible, pulls. Like for instance, I want to say in the upcoming sets, Bishamon is actually mostly pulls. I think I only ordered 3 pieces of artwork for him.
Wait. Go back. What about Bishamon?
Oh, I said, I said, yeah, who is that? I have no idea who Bishamon is. Anyway, he will be in one of the upcoming sets, and I want to say he's, I want to say 2/3 of his cards are actually comic pulls or something along those lines, because I was able to really get a whole lot from him.
I'm okay with this because he's who I'm playing on main when he drops.
Yeah, well, and he, I really like Bishamon. He's iconic, and I have a soft spot for Samurai. I played L5R for many, many years. So, anyway, so I go through and I pick all of that, and then once I have all of those done and assigned, that usually takes me a day or two. Then I go through and I start talking to all our different artists. Now, when UFS first started, Jason was only using one artist predominantly. I think he actually technically used 2, but Gonzalo, or known as, I hope I didn't butcher his name, he was the primary artist for Red Horizon. I want to say he did probably 95% of the artwork. And then Eduardo Bromley, and again, I'm really hoping I don't butcher that name either, but he did a couple other things. Tides of Vengeance was more Eduardo, less Genzo, but still those are the primary 2. And then I think Scott Carty and Santafung, and I think I can't ever remember, but somebody did Alice and stuff like that. So he started branching out. But the thing with him was because he was using one guy, and Gonzalo is actually really, really slow, at least from what I can gather with my interactions with him. It's difficult to make something when you've contracted a guy to make all these pieces, and they're like, oh, no problem, I can do that. And so what I do is, one of my earlier tasks when I first got hired on full time was to go find more artists, and I actually really like using studios. Sometimes you have hits, sometimes you have misses. It's just the way it is. But you have to find studios that are willing to work with you for what you're offering, and these days, especially with a lot of the studios in Southeast Asia and stuff, you can find them and get work done actually pretty cheap, which is nice. But so once I then have to find out who all's available, how many pieces they can do, and the time needed, and then go from there. And then I have to go through and create descriptions for them based on whatever the move is, or what I think that the designer is trying to convey in the foundation, or something along those lines, and then I send it out. Usually, pardon me, I have a cough for like the last week and a half. Usually what happens after that is that you will have a sketch phase, and then you will have your color phase. The sketch phase has to be approved by the licensor. Sometimes that can take a week to 2 weeks, depending on how fast and how busy the licensor is. They will either say, yes, it's fine to go to colors, or they will say, fix this. In Sabretooth, it was actually nicer because we weren't building we weren't building a relationship with the licensors like we have been here. They already had a much deeper relationship because they've been talking for quite some time. So it was literally like we send lines, and then they give us all the corrections, and we make corrections and then send colors. This last couple of sets, at least Darkstalkers and Mega Man, has been a little more delayed because you have to send them the lines, then they want corrections, and then you have to send them the corrected lines. And so I'm trying to get it so that I don't have to do that anymore, because it just slows down the process. So anyway, while all that's happening, people are playtesting stuff, and I get all the blank card frames as they were set up for UFS. So basically, what it is we have a multi-layered file, a multi-layered Photoshop file where you go and you can swap out the symbols and any other specifics of the actual card. And then so you just save the symbol, you say whether it's got a block or not, what kind of block, and then you pull that into InDesign, and then you can start laying out all the text that you have, although that usually comes a little later because playtesting needs to go through its paces with the cards. So once playtesting is complete, Usually that's a little before the artwork's fully done. So then I go through and I typeset all the cards, make sure there's little rules that you have to have, like, for instance, we don't like numbers at the end of the sentence, we don't like widows, we don't like orphans, no hyphen, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all that going on, and then what you do is, what we do is once we get the art in and it's proved, we then start dropping that into the actual card frame and update the card frame with the actual art in it. For any ultra rares that are going to be foiled, we have to create what's called a white plate, and that is where because how it works is normally with a regular card, it's just your typical gray core plain card stock, and you just print the 4 colors over it, cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. With a white plate, what happens is that they take that paper and they put like a very thin foil film on it, and they glue it to the paper. But the problem is that if you just print over it in your normal stuff, the blacks will pretty much kill whatever color it is, but without the black in there, it starts shining through. So you'll see like all the foil. So what we do is you actually hit it with a 5th color, and it goes on before the CMYK, and that's all white. And anywhere that it's white, it will be opaque, and the foil will not show through. So you basically are creating a negative on it. And then when you're done typesetting all the cards, you've done all the white plates for the cards that are required, and then you create the booster wrap, and then you create the packaging, and obviously the set logo's been done by that time, and we've decided what we're going to call it. And then once you get all that stuff together, you put it in the file and you tell the printer, like, hey, here it is, and they pull it all down. They run through stuff, and they get all the dies set up and print the thing, and then it comes out to us. Now, the thing is that a big difference between Sabretooth and Jasco is that Sabretooth had a lot of money behind it, and that's something I don't necessarily think that people quite realize. I mean, they might, who knows? But it's really, like, the first time someone actually explained to me how much it actually costs to create a CCG, it was mind-boggling. Like, I was like, no, that's crazy. It can't cost that much. And they're like, no, really, it does. It's a lot. So, for instance, you can actually see things differently based on different card games and how much money they have. For instance, with Pokemon and with Magic, their booster box usually will have a different cut on the top to go with the logo. And, I mean, it's basically the same box. It's just that instead of a circle or a half circle, it's like spiky or whatever, and it fits the logo itself. And almost every single Jasco and Sabretooth game I've ever made a booster for has the same just half circle at the top. It's just the way it is, because you don't want to have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to create a new die every single time you make a print. But Magic and Pokemon, they make tons of money, so they're like, yeah, whatever. So, but it's just little things like that can cost thousands of dollars. I mean, I was talking with the printer about the Mega Man board game about dice of all things. You're like, oh, it's no problem. They're like, yeah, well, you've got 2 ways. You can either print on it, or you can emboss it and do an indentation. And I was like, well, which one's cheaper? And he's like, well, it's kind of the same, because it costs more to print, but you get better detail. Otherwise, you have to create a tooling cost so that they create a die for it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, there's really nothing cheap in this industry. But we print in China at Jasco, which is actually a lot easier now because we have a printer who speaks English and has a office in Houston and another one in Denver. But they do everything over in China and they ship it in. With Sabretooth, it was we printed in Texas. I do believe it was Houston or Austin. I can't remember. We printed with a company called Yaquinto, and they are now owned by Cartamundi, so it's more difficult. However, a printer broker of mine at one of my old jobs at the Continent, she told me that there's no way you can actually compete with Chinese prices. It's just they're just so much cheaper. So that I know this is really long-winded, and I do apologize for everybody watching. Hopefully it's been informative. But that is actually probably the key the key factor, because sometimes, especially when there's a language barrier, certain things happen. Like, for instance, with the Mega Man tins. We got a shipment of Mega Man tins. It was less than 20 for Gen Con of last year. And we were like, awesome, well, you know, we want this to change, this to change, this to change, because he said it was just a pre-release. And Jason's messaging me on the other side, correcting me, and said that Cardamuni's in Dallas. I just knew they were in Texas. Anyway, but anyway, so we sent all these corrections back. We were like, well, hey, you know, the boosters look a little brown. We need to change this. We need to change that. And you know, they were like, okay. And then we literally didn't hear from them for months. And we're calling, we're writing, we're like, hey, where's all this stuff? And you know, we really need this product. And they're like, you know, it's just dead silence on the other end. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, by the way, Customs needs this letter. They've been needing it for 4 months. We're like, but we provided the letter. I mean, why? I don't know why it's not working. So then they're like, oh, all right, well, hang on, we'll get it shipped to you. The other, you know, the latest one, and I you know, there's only so much bad luck that one company or person can really have. But you know, the Darkstalker tins were literally like everything was going smooth, exactly like it was supposed to, as far as the creation of the set and the typesetting and all that stuff. We got it all to the printer, and then the printer calls us like 2 weeks later. Oh yeah, by the way, we're about to start your run, but there's a worldwide shortage on your paper. And we were like,
what?
Yeah, can we get some like flown in from France or something? Like, I mean, seriously, you promised us at this date. And they were like, oh, no, we understand. We'll send you some samples. Well, of course, it took time to get samples to us, and then it took time to get everything else. And we're like, okay, you know, and we think that we dodged the bullet, because they were like, we're able to get it on a fast boat. It's going to go in, no problem. And then it gets into LAX, and all of a sudden, Customs is like, yeah, all these containers from this printer, no, sorry, we're gonna do customs, and on that we gotta open and inspect them. And we were like, well, how long is that gonna take? And they were like, 3 to 5 days, no problem. Well, 7 days in, they hadn't even done anything with it. We're just like, oh my god, like, you don't realize how much this is gonna cost us. And they're like, well, cry us a river, sorry. So, but I mean, we were actually on the same boat that if you guys followed, the Robotech Kickstarter was on, and they, you know. They wanted to have it for Gen Con as well, and they didn't. And you know, that's just the way it is. In fact, Jason was showing us video of the guys unpacking it. I think it was Friday or Saturday morning, into our warehouse here in Vegas, and it was just like terrible. We're just like, oh gosh, like, it would have been so awesome to have that here. But you know, so however, again, you know, I'm really sorry to carry on like this, but one thing I love to do is talk. Currently, and this was something when I was brought onto JASCO, the first thing, you know, Jason and I sat down and we started talking about budget and what we were going to do for the rest of the year and all that stuff. And I said it's absolutely 100% a goal of mine, and it should be a goal of the company, to get UFS a year ahead, like absolutely 100%. And so it started with you know, the Darkstalker tins, and then we started doing the Mega Man Set 2 and the Darkstalker Set 2, and now we have more sets coming out in the future that we're actually gearing up on. I know the playtest, I think the designer's done the cards, or close to done the cards, or something like that, so I'll actually be ordering artwork probably in the next couple of weeks for those, after I go through them for comic pulls and everything like that. So I know, like usually, death for a CCG is non-consistent releases, and so the fact that UFS continues to survive is amazing, and obviously all the fans need to be you know, praised for that, because I mean, you know, I know that I nearly quit 7th Sea when there was like a 6 to 8 month delay between sets, but really love the game. So you know, we understand that, and I totally get it, but that's been one of my things, and something that I've been very adamant with Jason about is that, you know, we always have something going with that, and so those have been things that we're, you know, constantly thinking about. So obviously, I mean, other projects like the Mega Man board game and Dead Meat are you know, a priority. But one of the nice things is that when we hired AJ, he's like constantly working on UFS or one of the other projects, or I'm working on UFS or one of the other projects. So it's always like it's always on the mind. Like you can't just ditch your flagship, just cut it. So we're definitely always thinking about it. We're always working on it. So, anyways.
Okay.
Long.
No, that's fine.
I'm gonna throw up because that was so long. Ugh.
No, that's fine. Got a bunch of questions that we actually already here answered, so I'm gonna skip down to one that I want to know.
Oh, sure.
Somewhere in between there in that conversation.
I do want to remind everybody that is watching, we do have live Q&A, so if you guys got any questions, shoot them at us. We'll do our best to answer it. Now go ahead, Matt.
Okay. But yes, it was somewhere in between there. You were talking about like for commissioned artists.
Tirade. Yeah.
What qualifications do people need to be in commissioned artists for Jasco? Like if you didn't go to a studio.
The first thing is don't suck, I guess. which is of course entirely subjective. The big thing that I do is you have to be willing to work for what we're willing to pay. And I would say at this point, like when I first started art directing, it was kind of like one of those things. It was on the edge. But these days, I pretty much require you to work digitally, at least in your final colors. So because a lot of times there just needs to be too many there's too many corrections needed. Where if you're actually painting something, it's a lot harder to correct that outside of the line space. So those are the two big things. However, if you would like, tom@jascogames.com, you could just send me an email submission, send me a link to your portfolio, and we can talk. I'm more than willing to critique people if they would like. I do come from an art background. Actually, I was my college degree is actually, while it's in visual communications, it was a specialty of illustrations. And while you can go see stuff on DeviantArt that I've done, I'm just okay. But I know the principles, and I certainly know anatomy and all that stuff. And I know when you can bend things and break them, and so I try to be nice and fair. I won't like smush your dreams, because I've had my dreams quashed by several people. So.
I definitely suck at drawing. I just first want to ask this question because I have a couple art friends that I know would love to get in, and then also similar vein, just like. Do you have any suggestions for people just trying to get into the gaming industry in general?
The first thing to do is figure out what you are good at in the game industry. Like, for instance, how I got into it was I kept, like, first of all, I played games. I loved games, and I was playing Legend of the Five Rings at the time, and later 7C and a couple other AEG products. And so I would constantly, like, I found out who the art director was, and I just bugged him with illustrations over and over and over, like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? And it was always like, nope, sorry, you're not good enough. Nope, sorry, you're not good enough. And finally, when I started thinking that I was better, I started branching out, going to all these other places. But the easiest place to go is Gen Con at the time. You can still go to Origins. There's still plenty of people that go to Origins and show off I would just take one day where all I did was I wandered the dealer hall and with a business card and portfolio in hand and say, hey, would you please look at my stuff, and would you give me a job? And no one, of course, ever agreed, sadly. However, one thing that I didn't realize was that while there are artists everywhere and people lined up to draw, graphic design was not something that a lot of people did. So oddly enough, so my boss at Sabretooth, Eric Apel, when he worked for AEG, he was the head guy on 7C, and when AEG pulled the plug on 7C, they promised like one final set that they weren't actually going to print, and it was only like 18 or 22 cards or whatever, and they kept saying, like, hey, we'll get it out to you, but they never did. And Eric was like, oh, I'm just so busy, guys, like, I just can't get it done. Well, finally, I emailed Eric, and I was like, hey, I can do all this stuff. Like, if you just let me, like, give me the files that I need, I'll sign whatever you want. and just give me the files I need. I'll create the artwork for you. And so he was like, all right, well, I totally will do that. So he gave me all the card frames, and so it was really kind of a crash course in typesetting cards. And then a few years later, he and I were talking, and he had moved on to Sabretooth Games. We're chit-chatting, and he's like, yeah, so, you do graphic design. And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, we're probably going to be looking for a graphic designer soon. And I said, well, here's my card. Feel free to call me. And he was like, absolutely, let's do it. So, and then once that was done, like once you get your foot in the door, I mean, it's almost an incestuous business at times. Like everybody seems to know everybody at some point, or at least I seem to know everybody, because that was the running joke with my coworkers and I at Gen Con. And so you just find people like, hey, do you need graphic design work or this? So for instance, I've done work on a freelance capacity for AEG and Aberrant Games and Soda Pop Miniatures, Cypher Studios, and obviously Pokemon and Jasco. And I started off doing freelance stuff for Jasco as well. So
So what about freelance artists? Because and I up nearly every episode, so everybody must be tired of this. But my own sister did freelance artwork for Jasco Games for a card. So
which card?
Zealot Rush.
Oh, yeah, all right. Well, I mean, I would say right now every single one of our artists, except for the person that did Yellow Devil in the upcoming set, is a freelance artist. So we don't currently have any artists on staff as far as a salaried position. So it's not that we wouldn't want to. The question is, can you actually get enough out of them? Because, like, for instance, when I first started wanting to get into the game industry as an actual job instead of freelancing, I sat down with a guy named Luke Peterschmidt, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want you to pay me to draw all day. And he was like, that's not going to happen. I was just like, oh, but come on. So there's a few companies that actually do have production artists on their staff. They're very few and far between. Very, very rare. Usually, like we've talked about trying to get one of our favorite artists to come and draw for us, but the problem is that he's good enough where he either A, makes more money doing freelancing, or B, can command a greater salary elsewhere, because a lot of times the people that can actually afford to have artists on staff are video game companies, and they'll have like a farm of artists that they have for concept artwork and backgrounds and whatnot. Blizzard's a good example, and some other people like that. So in fact, one of my favorite artists of the current day and age, Mark Gibbons, was, I still think is actually at Blizzard. So, but he started with Games Workshop. So,
oh wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so again, I mean, all aspiring artists, I will be tough but fair, and I won't entirely drive you right into the ground, but I will tell you, if you're good enough. So, but we're always looking for more artists. It's just the question. The big question is, and this is something that I struggle with when I'm doing actual artwork, is good enough and on time is better than perfect and 2 weeks late. So, like for instance, just a little anecdote from my own life. I had a friend who's they had a daughter, and when she was born, they said, well, we want a mural in her room. And I was like, you really want a mural? Like, I thought you guys were looking at moving at some point. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's just do a picture. And I said, well, what do you want? And they said, we would like to have fairies in like a garden playing. And I'm like, okay. It took me almost a year. In fact, I was finishing up stuff to the day that I brought that to the party. So, because they had the 1-year-old party, and I was like, sweet, and I did that, and there you go. So, but again, it was that was the one thing. Like you have to, especially as a professional illustrator, if you can't meet a deadline, you're no good to anybody. So, and one of the things that I struggle with a lot is there's some artists who they just miraculously have stuff happen to them, and I get that, but it's not my problem, and I understand and I empathize with their situation, but you know, you got like if you took on too much stuff, just tell me. I will go reassign it. But you know, if you really are able to get your stuff, like don't give me why I don't see anything. Just get me stuff, really.
Right.
So.
We also asked this with Jason. Something that you may be able to elaborate on. What's the approval process for licensed products? Because, you know, we're dying to know when we're getting the Disney One Saturday morning set. I want Darkwing Duck.
Ruby.
No, I want Darkwing Duck. Ruby can take a back seat to Darkwing Duck.
I would want Pith Possum, but, you know, I would go with Gizmo Duck or Darkwing for sure.
Give me Darkwing.
But generally, you know, the approval process isn't. I mean, I already kind of touched on it, but basically what it is that you know, we send all the artwork in a batch, usually per character. Although if I had it all at the same time, like if artists actually got me all the lines when they were supposed to, you know, I get that all together, and Capcom has a really cool submission system that I just plug everything into, and then what they do is they look it over internally in America. They send it on to Japan. Japan takes a peek at it and then sends any comments back. They translate those comments and they give them to me. And it usually just amounts to something simple, like, you know, Mega Man should have these 3 little engravings on the back of his helmet, or, you know, the Buster should have 6 dots on the side, and Morgan should, you know, the things on the side should be feathers, not fur. Something simple like that. And then you know, then I send that back to the artist, and the artist corrects it, and I send it back to Capcom, and they say yes or no, and then it goes there until we finally get the color thing done. With the miniatures were actually a whole lot more difficult, you know, as I'm sure anyone who's followed the Kickstarter understands. The miniatures were literally scrutinized down to the detail, where they were saying, well, you should change this, and our people were like, that's not going to work. It's too small. Like, you don't understand. And they were like, no, it's fine. I'm like, you know, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Capcom wants this, and the sculptor wants that. And eventually, Capcom would relent, but they were like, we better really notice, like, that it can't actually be done, because if we think that it can be done, we're going to be unhappy. And I'm like, well, you know, we want to make you happy, but I have to go with the professionals who have done this before. So, but that's the basics of stuff. And then you have like a black and white phase for artwork, and then you have an approval for the color artwork, and then you actually have an approval for all the packaging, where they look over legal lines and make sure everything is, like, logo placement is correct and not messed up, and there's nothing out of place, et cetera, et cetera. So, for instance, we actually were told on the Darkstalkers artwork that we needed to swap out pictures of Felicia because they didn't mesh with the rest of the thing, and I'm like, but it's not even on the same face. Like, there's this one, and there's the sides, and this is the back. Like, you don't even see the other things. And they're like, nope, sorry. So, but again, you know, they're the ones that allow us to use their license, so you gotta count that in them. So, and they're good people. I enjoy both of them. So both of our contacts there.
All right. What do you got, Matt?
Speaking of the starter deck packaging,
yes.
You're doing completely new things for Mega Man and Darkstalkers, which
Yes.
I love, where you've got it opened up and you got the foil character.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you get the ideas for that? Because, like, I saw Schwartz doing it first, and I'm just seeing a lot more other card game companies doing it.
Well,
I'm just wondering if you looked at Schwartz or if it was just...
No, actually, I think I took a page from my Pokemon training in this regard.
Right. Pokemon did that too.
Pokemon does that with their starter decks.
Used to, I think.
Well, at least when I was there, Black and White 4, 5, and 6 all had starter decks that had windows.
And I
really?
remember some of the very old ones from a long time ago Dad opened too.
Possibly.
Or am I crazy?
But
That's how I know I'm getting one that you're in charge of. It's got a window, because the ones I'm getting now don't.
gotcha. Well, I'm sure Jason will you know, like, send angry messages across my Skype if I'm talking out of place here. But
Well, then just turn off the scope.
that's right. Sorry, buddy. Haha. No, so basically, and I think we've been very open about this, is that the Mega Man license has actually very much opened up UFS to avenues that we normally wouldn't have had. I mean, like, for instance, we sold out entirely of our first print run to the point where the Mega Man tin is actually the only thing that we've reprinted. And the basically what's happening is that we're trying to expand and get into more places. And one of the reasons that we changed the packaging was because some of the stores that we've been looking at would actually like it to hang from a rack instead of be in a box. Some want the box, some don't. Doesn't really matter. But you know what we're doing is since we're trying to open up to all these different places that are different stores that we haven't hit before, that was really the catalyst of why we're doing all this extra packaging changes. And so when we started talking to the printer, they were like, "Oh, well, sure, you know, we could do this, we could do this." They actually sent us something where I think it would have held about 40 cards, not necessarily 62, 63. Can't remember where we're at, but anyway, you know, it was this tiny little deck, and I was like, "Well, that's kind of what we're going for, but it's too thin." And then I was talking to Jason. I was like, "What if we foiled the character and stuff?" He's like, "Yeah, that would actually be awesome." And then we were like, "And then we could have a window," and then of course the window changed the box size because you have to have like an insert and a little tray to put all the stuff in. Because you can either this is the funky thing about packaging. Obviously, the structural integrity of the box has to remain where it can be folded by a machine and not rip apart. So you either have to have an additional excess of stuff on the side and show most of the card, or you can have a tiny, tiny, tiny window. And we went for the slightly larger box with, you know, more of the card display because we want to show off the art. So, and then that was really the big reason behind that, is that, you know, Mega Man has opened up a lot of different avenues for us, and we want to be able to get more cards out there for more players, because one of the things that we really have been trying to do, besides, of course, you know, make the game more consistent in releases, is actually have the game out there and grow the casual player base. So some of that, you know, I mean, just to be frank, I mean, some of that's going to fall on the players too, because I remember listening to someone say that they started trying UFS, and then the person who knew how to play just came in and beat them down completely, like, "Ha ha, ha, you suck, you're terrible." And I was like, is that like a League of Legends thing, or are they a big League of Legends? And he was like, "No, it's just, you know, that's just the way it is." But, you know, I don't want to play UFS like that because it's no fun. And so, you know, a lot of times, you know, we're hoping that not that the current players can help cultivate their groups as they grow. You know, obviously, I mean, there's certain people we get messages all the time like, "I can't grow my group for this reason, or I can't grow my group for this reason," and that doesn't have anything to do with the player themselves. But you know, obviously, it's better if you help.
Circumstances beyond your guys' control sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. So, but it's always good if you help new players instead of just be like, "Ha ha, look at what I can do to you because you don't know what you're doing," kind of thing.
Best
Which,
way
don't
to
get me wrong. I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, best way to get a new player, and I've done this with a bunch of my friends, is I just give them my most powerful, stupidest deck that's also simple to play, and just let them beat the crap out of me. And once they get the thrill of beating the crap out of me, and they know that I was a semi-decent player, they're just like, "Oh, I could do this to other people." Yeah,
it's true. It's true. I was going to say there was of course the whole thing with my staff card at Gen Con. Like, I didn't have time to make a deck beforehand, and so of course I'm like, "Oh, cool. Well, this will be sweet. You know, I can just play, and I'll just, you know, throw it in this deck and be like, hey, you don't mind if I'm off symbol for this game or something." And then of course, like, you know, "Oh, Vespera, right," and oh, I lose. Damn. You know, and then of course there's AJ, and I was like, "Really? That card's silly." I mean, the sad thing was I submitted my card design, which of course they're not tournament legal, like they're completely just whatever. And Jason's like, "Absolutely not. That's too powerful." And I was like, "All right, fine," you know. And so I go and I change it, and it is what it is now. AJ submits, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." I'm sure it's because he was new.
This card's stupid.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I think I have found a way around it, but I'm not absolutely sure. It kind of depends. So you really have to. There requires a perfect storm. Now I will say I've beaten AJ, playing his character with my character. So I know it's possible. But when I've played against other people who are playing AJ, that's a different story. So, and then of course I sulk. I'm like, oh, my character's terrible. Well, at least it's better than my 1-dot. So, because my 1-dot's awful. Like, I will never forgive Seth Morgan for making me absolutely trashy. So, an 8 hand size whose total power is reversed based on not having any cards in your hand. Like, how awesome is that? So,
I'm trying to think of any of the cards from back in the day that I considered really good.
You mean staff cards?
Yeah, the staff cards.
Josh Morris was amazing. So, because he could use his deck as momentum, so it was just like I hit you with the throw, the gate's powerful, and oh, look at that, plus 80 damage. So
that's a lot of them I never saw.
Yeah,
I myself only have like 2 or 3.
Yeah, I have every single one, including the really obscure ones that most people probably don't have.
Forced to Eat Kittens, I believe, was a card.
Forced to Eat Kittens. That's actually Ben Misner's card. We made a card for a sales guy in the UK that I don't know if many people have him. Obviously, we made one for Helen Morley, who is our HR person, and Anya, who is the office manager, and So I mean, there's a few. I'm sure there's some, but I have them all. So
nice.
They're all sitting in a Street Fighter box somewhere, or is it Soul Calibur? I can't remember. Anyway, it's in the box of stuff that I move all the time. And then I still have a small stack of my character cards, my first one. So, yeah.
I will play you for your first one.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. I remember though, I was worth at one point. I was worth $15 on eBay, which was pretty awesome. Thought about flooding the market.
Not soliciting himself, people. Do not go looking on eBay.
That's right. That's right. I'm sure my value has gone down quite considerably since then. At least for the 1-dot.
So we know you're a whiz at UFS. What other card games do you have experience in? Obviously, Pokemon.
I heard L5R somewhere there.
Yeah. So.
What clan were you in L5R?
I was a unicorn guy, mostly. Well, the problem with the unicorn, at least for the entire time that I played, was that you were either really amazing or really awful. So there was never a time where you were just good. You were either broken or really crappy. So
that's why I played Scorpion.
That's right. Who started off as really awful. We can't win by honor, but we don't lose by dishonor. But we become really easy to kill, and all our guys are kind of whippy.
We got better.
Yeah. When your best dude is a 2/3 for 9 who makes you discard cards, and that's terrible. Anyway, Bayusha Aramoro for the win. Yeah, still remember all that stuff. Anyway, so I actually started playing CCGs in beta Magic. I actually, up until 2005, I had a Alpha Royal Assassin. And a Juzam Jin. And actually I had most of the Jins from Arabian Nights, but so I started off with Magic. I played L5R, I played Decipher Star Wars, I've played 7th Sea Warlord, obviously UFS. I was actually very into the very first Warhammer 40k CCG. I played Warcry for a little, which is Jason's favorite. And let's see, other CCGs that I've played. I want to say I've tried a good majority of them. There's so many that were terrible. I was talking about this with someone the other night, how there were just waves. Magic came out, and then there was some game that was like a space game with asteroids and all that stuff, which was terrible. It didn't last very long, and there was Wyvern, Hyborian Gate. So I played Guardians. Guardians was there, and then those all went away, and then L5R and the Decipher Star Wars came out. And, those survived for, obviously L5R survives to this day. Decipher died out. So I mean, there were certainly a lot of ones I played. I played Versus. I played World of Warcraft. I did not play. I played Versus semi-competitively until I realized the people I was up against, and then I realized I didn't want to be part of that crowd. And then I played WoW.
What played with that?
Well, let me give you my my Versus horror story. And mind you, I'm sure it's anecdotal. And neither of these happened directly to me either. But I was playing at Origins, which was one of their first $10,000 tournaments. It was only like set 1, maybe set 2. And the match next to me actually was interesting because this guy had he was playing the one guy was playing a Doom deck, and I can't remember what the other guy was playing, but the guy who played the Doom deck was sitting there and passing and passing and passing, and the other guy was going along, and he would always wait for the other guy to say pass. Well, after about 2 minutes of doing all this stuff, the guy stopped waiting for the guy to do anything. So he just started going. He's like, well, I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And he was he was obviously in the killing field. Like, he was, doing enough damage to actually kill the guy. But because he stopped asking if he had a response, the one guy called over a judge, and the judge comes over and he's like, what's going on? And he's like, well, you need to DQ this guy. And he's like, what for? And he's like, well, he's not allowing me a response window. And so he gets the whole story, and then the judge says, okay, well, I'm not going to DQ him. Why don't we just go through it from the beginning again, and we'll go step by step. So they go through step by step, and then it turns out the guy had absolutely no prayer. He was just waiting for the other dude to stop allowing him a response window so that he could try to get him DQ'd. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was I was talking to this other guy who I met playing the 40K CCG, and we're chatting about life and everything. And then one of his friends comes over, and he's looking really sullen. And we're like, hey man, what's going on? And he's like, it just I didn't think people were this way. And his friend's like, what do you mean with this way? And he's like, well, so they called around, right? And we're like, yeah. And he said, you only have to wait 5 minutes before the other guy gets a DQ because he didn't show up. And we're like, yeah, exactly. That's always the case. He's like, so I wait 5 minutes. They announce over the PA that I can go turn in. So I pack up all my stuff, and after I packed it all up and I'm getting up out of my seat, this guy runs up and he starts talking. He's like, oh man, I'm so sorry I'm late. Can we play? And he's like, no man, you're late. Like, I'm sorry, you're disqualified. And he's like, come on, man. Like, I was off for a few minutes, and I was just getting some stuff, and I didn't hear the announcement. Blah blah blah. He's giving this big old sob story, and the guy's like, sorry, man. I mean, it's part of the rules. Like, you need to be here. It's not my responsibility to make sure you're in your seat. You had 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, the guy who was late starts crying. And he's literally like sobbing tears down his face, like, oh my God. And the guy takes pity on him. He's like, okay, just stop crying, we'll play. So he puts all his stuff back out, they start playing, and literally within the first game, the guy who said, sure, let's play, accidentally draws an extra card, and the other guy pulls a judge over and has him DQ. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I would have had to fight every fiber of my being to not just leap across the table and strangle that kid. Like, everything, just so those are my stories with Versus. After that, I'm like, I'll just play for fun, because I mean, it wasn't a great game, in my opinion.
It was only the best game.
Ouch.
So, I thought it was okay. It had severe problems, and the fact that they were like openly saying they didn't really play test it very well, I had issues with, because
Well, the first 2 sets were good. Then the second 2 sets were garbage. The Superman and Spider-Man set.
The Superman and Spider-Man set. Oh, and the Batman set was terrible.
Which Batman set?
The first one. It came right around Marvel Knights, I want to say. Had the Gotham PD who could reinforce like another Gotham PD regardless. So
all these people talking about Marvelverse. I didn't play that game anywhere near enough.
Yeah, well, you now can, assuming that they fixed that whole LCG problem. At least
that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And their brand manager, God, he was a jerk.
I didn't meet the guy. I only heard the story.
Oh,
so.
I did. I wanted to talk to them because I was interested about the Versus stuff coming back. and he was really bombing me with all these legacy, other LCG legacy. And I told him, like, no, I don't play Legacy. I'm really looking forward to Versus. And he's like, well, what about the Alien thing? He's like, again, I don't have any interest in it. He's like, well, we don't need you in this game. We don't need you in the Versus game if that's how you going to be about Legacy. It's like, who are you? And he's like, da-da. It's like, and you're their brand manager.
Well, I mean, you know, it's one of those things. Like I've had people come up to me and say that they felt like we brushed them off at Gen Con, and that's certainly not the way that
we were busy at Gen Con.
Yes, we were. So and it's good to be busy.
In meetings, we were demoing our butts off.
Yeah, well, you know, and I listened to that Dead Meat video about 6,000 times. So
that is not my fault. We can put you over there.
No, actually, it's funny because both Gen Cons that I've been with Jason, I'm always stuck next to some video. So, like, the last time, I just remember, like, an obscene guitar riff, like, the entire time. By the end, I'm just
like... Yeah, I can't imagine being there the entire weekend, because I was, like, on the last day, I would just hang out at the Jaska booth just waiting for my friends, and I heard it, like, 20, 30 times. So I'm like, oh, God.
Well, thankfully, I mean, after about the first day and a half, you just kind of tune it out. But it was funny because Keg and I would just look at each other every single time. We'd be like, "You will die." So, in fact, I worked at there's a nickel arcade in.
The Green Lantern set. That was the set that came out with Marvel.
Yeah, the Green Lantern Emerald Enemies. The green.
I hated that set.
Most people did. Anyway, there was a nickel arcade that I used to work at in Portland called Wonderland, and it was at the time there was the X-Men game that was kind of like Double Dragon, where it was a side-scrolling brawler. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing was there's this part, and it's at the, it's just in whatever intro it has, and you watch the asteroid planet that Magneto rolled over or something, and it zooms into the thing, and then you see a close-up of Magneto, and it's like X-Men. And like we got to the point where we heard that over all the other video games. It was just like you'd be walking by, you'd hear the thing, you're like X-Men. So
that is the Children of the Atom fighting game.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time. I was like somewhere in the 90s, like 92, something like that. Not to date me, because I am the oldest guy at JSCO. Get that?
Yeah, so. You do.
Yes, most tenured. We'll stick with that. Yeah. All right. So next question, because I keep rambling on. So.
No, we don't mind if you guys ramble. I mean, we had Nathan rambling forever and ever and ever.
I know. I'm trying to keep this fairly UFS centric.
He holds the world record for longest video with us, I believe.
Oh. Well, longest non-set review video. No, actually, no. Longest video we have ever produced. Well, without Matt here, it's the longest for when it's Matt and I. But longest video ever produced was Let's Build a Deck Joe Higashi, where it was me and Garrett, before I understood the magic of Google Hangout.
Huh. Well, Nathan. Actually, a funny story about Nathan and I. There several times, it actually just happened today, it happened several times at Gen Con, we're sitting there and we're getting really amped up about our conversation. We're like, no, you don't understand, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, and we're talking, and then eventually, all of a sudden, either we come to the conclusion, or like Jason points it out, or something along those lines, where they're like, guys, you're arguing the same point to each other. You're really agreeing. And we're like, oh yeah, I guess we are. Dang. All right, cool. All right, high five. Yeah, we're both on board. Let's do this. So I love Nathan. Nathan's a fun guy. One of my absolute favorites of one of my absolute favorite stories of Nathan was when we were at I want to say we were at Gamma, and we went to Batista's, which is across the street from Valley's, and it's this Italian restaurant, and they serve you a carafe of red and white wine, and it's all you can drink, but of course it's wine, so I mean, they're pretty safe with one carafe. Nathan, I think, went through 3/4, if not 4/5 of one of those things, and like, he's a fun drunk, because he's sitting there, he's talking to Lily specifically. He's going on and on about this thing, and then he's like, but I mean, I've talked a lot. I'm repeating myself, and so I'm just gonna let it go. And she's like, well, no, I really appreciate your talking to me about it. He's like, and another thing, and then literally it's another like 15-minute thing, and then he's like, I'm sorry. I'm repeating myself. Like I'm just gonna stop now. And she's like, no, it's okay. Well, and now that you mention it, it just went on and on and on for like an hour.
3 weeks later.
I know. So, but yeah, no, I love Nathan. Nathan's fun. He's good people. We play StarCraft together. He is not amazing at StarCraft, but I am so rusty. Like he's probably better than me now. So.
He's fairly fun to run in Warcraft with.
And he's tried to get me back to Warcraft, and I just refuse because I'm not an MMO guy. So I tried playing Warcraft for a long time, and it just.
It takes a certain amount of patience to do MMOs. It takes a certain amount of patience and willingness, because if you don't have a full group, you're stuck with people you do not know, and you are at their mercy, and you will die over and over and over again if you do not get a good group.
Yep.
Now, luckily, Nathan and I are taking up two of the most prominent positions in the group. Nathan is the artillery battery in the back, casting the heavy spells, and I'm playing the tank, so I run up and take all the damage and make people come to me.
You're Leroy Jenkins.
If you got a crappy healer,
I hate Leroy Jenkins, but I succeed.
That's true.
If you got a crappy healer, though, you're out.
Oh no, because I play a monk tank, and monks tanks are unique among the other tanks because we actually have healing spells on top of tanking spells.
Okay. So yeah, I haven't played since Monk came out.
Yeah.
I'd probably play a Monk if I ever got back in.
Yeah, I started off with a Druid, and apparently that was like the weakest class at the beginning. And so I muddled through like 40 to 50. I mean, 40 to 50 took like an eternity for me. My problem is I'm just like not willing to go find people to hang out with. Like I want to play with friends. And the problem was all my friends wanted to play on different servers, and so it was like, well, what do I do and such. So actually, what the last MMO that I played with any sort of regularity was actually at Pokemon, and a bunch of us were playing Guild Wars 2. And I really enjoyed Guild Wars 2. I think it's really one of the best MMOs I've ever played. But I started my first MMO experience was Final Fantasy 10 or what?
11.
11, yeah, and with 11, the problem was you could solo the game up until level 10, and then you had to group up, and at that point I just lost all interest because I wanted to play a Gulka, and I was a Gulka monk, and they were like, you had a subclass, and then they were like, oh well, you gotta do a subclass, and the best subclass is a rogue, but a rogue Gulka was ass, and pardon my French, and then so I'd be like, rogue Gulka looking for party, and they'd all laugh at you like, ha ha ha, you obviously have no idea what you're doing. So what are you gonna do? it's just the way.
I gotta play some StarCraft with you and Nathan. I'm bad at that game too, but I don't get to play.
I've been pretty much hanging out in Heroes of the Storm lately. So I got into the alpha, which I'm with, and it's been too much.
Send me your thing for that, because I have no friends who have the alpha.
We'll talk. Although we just need to be friends in Battle.net now. So.
Oh, they did update it, so you can just do that now.
Yeah, they took it off the alpha servers, and now it's on production servers, so I can see all the rest of the Battle.net people.
Because I haven't played in 3-4 months, because I'm like, none of my friends got an alpha, so I'm like, this is not fun.
Yeah.
Everyone sucks.
Who are you playing? Heroes of the Storm.
I was just playing a lot of alphas for a while, and I was still at a point where I was just testing out everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then all my friends are just like, all right, we don't have alphas, come back to League.
Mm-hmm.
I play League every night instead.
And I still have a League login. I play Yasuo all the time. Love League, except for the people on it that are bronze level or below. In fact, another anecdotal story, because I like stories. A friend of mine played League for a long time, and I was I would always be amazed that he could be so cruel to other people because he's not that cruel to most people I know. And then there's one day he was telling me, he was like, yeah, dude, it was so awesome. I carried the entire team. They were like 3 levels down. I brought them all the way back. We're destroying the other team. It was awesome, and it was all me. Like, I totally carried everybody. I wasn't even the carry. Like, I was just Garen, and it was awesome. And then as we're sitting there beating the core of the other players into the dust, and we're laughing maniacally, I just tell my team, like, you're okay. You need to go back to bots. You, man, just need to uninstall. And then peace, I'm out, I was just like, really, that's not a fun experience for any of those people, I'm sure. Like, it isn't the point of a game to have fun. And so then he comes to me like two months later or something like that. He's like, I'm done with LOL. And I'm like, what? I thought you were really into it. He's like, no, can't stand all those jerks. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, there's so many jerks in there. I can't take it. So I'm quitting. And I was like, oh, -1.
He'll be back in 2 weeks.
Play a little bit now, but hopefully he's not quite as competitive as he usually is. So
yeah,
it's pretty decent.
Matt, do we have anything else?
I don't think so. Other than talking about games, but then we have like 3 more hours at this rate.
If you get me started on the Alien game, we'll be here till midnight.
Well, I've heard good reviews about it. I would say
I have learned that I have a 2-foot vertical leap from a seated position because of that game.
I've never been scared by a video game, ever. Not once. Although I'm not usually scared by movies either.
Yeah, horror stuff just doesn't faze me. The only time I've ever been freaked out from a game wasn't even really the game. It was when Doom 3 had first came out. I had played it nonstop throughout the night. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I go pick up health pack in darkened room, and I'm like, something's going to jump me from behind. And as I'm turning around, my cat from the back of the room just jumps onto my back. And I just lose it. Because it was right when something was jumping me on screen that my cat decides to attack me.
Everybody should have that same one jump scare from that one game. I don't know anybody that didn't at least flinch or become slightly startled from when the dogs jumped through the windows in Resident Evil 1.
I can't remember. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, but I know almost everybody I know is like, I wasn't scared, but the jump moment startled me at the very least.
Gotcha.
So,
all
my friends.
Oh, go ahead.
We're going to test to see how many of my friends actually watch this.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if there were any community questions, because I'm all waiting for the sucker punch.
All we had is Josh TFTW telling us the Death Knight tanks are better.
Oh, well, maybe, I guess.
We'll see if he's still watching. I'm going to let everyone know that I've never played a Resident Evil.
Huh.
So.
Gotcha. Well, if I may, I don't think she's watching anymore.
Network?
Do
you have PlayStation Network?
Nope.
Well, you just suck then.
What are you going to do?
Because I was going to tell you, PlayStation Network Resident Evil Revelations is supposed to be free for PSN Plus, PlayStation Plus members next month.
I heard that Steam is going to make Company of Heroes 2 free sometime, I think, this weekend.
Ooh.
Yes. That and like 8 or 9 other games are all up right now.
I didn't care about any of the other ones. I saw Company of Heroes 2, and I just kind of stopped and focused on that.
What about Payday? Payday 2.
No.
It's just, community is worse than League. That's a problem.
I will say this about Company of Heroes. I haven't played the second one. The first one I thought was the best RTS I've ever played, hands down. Better than StarCraft, better than Warcraft, better than Command & Conquer. Like, Company of Heroes was the bar of excellence as far as I was concerned. So I'm looking forward to playing the second one. I completely forgot about it. And then when I saw it was free, I was like, I guess I'll try that. So, but yeah, I was going to say, just for my edification before it gets too long, I don't think she's watching anymore. But if she is, I wanted to say hello to my girlfriend. She's back in Oregon. I miss her very much. Love you, Carol. So, shout outs, props. So you had one viewer you normally wouldn't have, probably sitting there going, "Oh my God, he's talking about work." Oh. So, but anyway. So no more questions, no more anything. Do you guys have like any non-approved questions that you want to throw my way? See if you can get me uncomfortable and squirm in my chair.
Well, I tried with your favorite color, but you asked me that right away.
I'm not going to be thrown off a mystical bridge.
Yep.
There goes my coconuts question.
Like, all of my non-approved questions are the ones we've already asked, and it's like, I know the reasons. It's just me being antsy because I want another license. Because Mega Man is really cool and all, but Mega Man's not my thing.
He's already told us what the next license is. If you watch The Office, we would know that Frozen is the next license.
Do you want to build a snowman, Joe?
Yes. As long as that big snowman at the end of the series.
I actually have a question from Facebook.
Oh, sure. Shoot away.
Do you have a time frame on when the next license announcement will be for UFS?
No. So, without obviously getting too far into it, because the general discussion is you can't discuss. It's like Fight Club. I can't talk about Fight Club. However, just to give you a thing. I mean, we literally have irons in the fire constantly, and we were just talking about some today, and it's like we need to really work on this, and it would be awesome. I would anticipate, like from the start of talking to someone to the end of signing papers and getting the advance and all that stuff done. It could be upwards of a year, if not more. I will say, and hopefully Jason will not slap my hand for this, we had a lot of great contacts made in the last 6 months, of games that or licenses that we really like. However, while I would love to tell them to you, I can't tell you about all of them. Yep. That's me blurring out my mouth, while I say what we've gotten. It rhymes with. So.
I'm gonna use some computers. I'm gonna figure that out.
That's right. I'm like an NFL play guy. Like, hang on. I gotta. Yeah, I want to flip switch 3 reverse on 2, please. So. I will say. I mean, like, there's the funny thing, and I can probably say this without doing anything. The hysterical thing is when you talk to a company and you're like, listen, I'm totally willing to give you money if you will let me use your license, because that's generally how it works. And I've been appalled by the fact that there's companies out there who are like, no, it's all good. I went to one company because I know someone who works there, and I was like, dude, what would it take? Like, give me a figure. I'll see if we can come up with it. And he's just like, we don't do license stuff. I was like, what do you mean you don't do license stuff? He's like, sorry, don't do it. And I'm like, you realize, I mean, we'd be giving you money. You already have lots of this, and you already have lots of that. You're very familiar with what we do. What's the problem here? And he's like, we just don't care. We're making enough money. And I'm just like, all right, fine. You realize it would be perfect. I'm sorry?
Sounds like the Blaze Blue people. I heard that they are notorious for just being very difficult to work with with their properties.
Yeah, I have no I have no idea who the Blaze Blue people are. So, but it's just sad because there's I feel that there are certain things that if we got would be an immense boon. Not that Mega Man hasn't, but like for instance, if UFS was able to get certain licenses, I think it would open a lot more doors for us. So we're always optimistic about new licenses. It's just we have to have the time to talk contracts. They have to have the time to talk contracts. We have to talk. Your people will talk with my people. They'll do lunch. All that jazz.
It's just like I love UFS. I'm trying to get more people into it every day I can. But it's just like when I talk about it's like Mega Man, it's just like I like UFS. All my other friends like Mega Man, but I'm just like I played maybe one of the Mega Man games. I want something I can really get behind.
Sure. Well, and I mean, I believe it or not, I was very much the same way. I was very much the same way with when UFS 4 came out, and it was the Samurai Showdown / King of Fighters set.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, well, you know, we really want to like actually play all this King of Fighters stuff, and I'm like, with that fairy logo, really? Like, unless it's, I think her name was Leanne, the girl in the jumpsuit with really, you know, large.
Yeah.
Land.
Who's Leanne?
Yeah, I was like, unless I'm playing her, like, or Mai, I really don't care. I'm gonna go play Homaru. I'm gonna play, you know, Ukyo, like somebody.
For what, Tom? When you could play Soiree, the capoeira cowboy.
Yeah, no. No. So I really miss playing Taki from Soul Calibur, my Ibuki deck that I had for a long time, which crushed several challengers. So actually, and this is funny. This is you know, there's always a couple stories out there that I tell people just to keep things interesting because they're true, but they really sound outlandish. There was a I take full blame for Talon, and you know, because I helped design her. So now things should have been done afterwards, but you know, yeah, that's me. And Ibuki was a guy named Bill. We were not designers, and it really shows. So, you know, just for the record, it's out there. Bam.
I do believe that is a bombshell we can end on.
Yeah, well, you know, if you want to really know my true one dark secret, I guess people can come up to me at cons and say, hey, what's that one thing that you were, you know, hinting at on the podcast? And I'll tell them, because it's awesome. It's not something, I would actually say it's a very short list, like maybe, I don't know, a couple people that have actually done that. So, you know, good lead in for you know, breaking the ice. You can always just walk up, hey, Tom, what's that one thing?
What's that one thing you would do for a Klondike bar?
And that's right. That's right. And I'm probably going to hell for it, but, you know, the person who asked me to do it already is gone.
There we go. You've had it coming.
That's right. Well, she was very nice. She was my favorite nun. I really felt bad.
I don't see Steve as a female nun, but okay.
Yes. Anyway.
All right.
Like I said, good icebreaker for when you want to talk to me.
Oh, yeah. All right, Matt, anything else we got?
No. Just, well, double check on who we're having next week as a guest.
I believe Mr. O'Brien expressed interest in wanting to come back, though I have not heard from him since.
Well, considering he's about 10 minutes away from me, I will try and get a hold of him tomorrow and work things out.
Can he be an in-studio guy?
I could drag him over here.
Yeah.
Way to do it.
Yep, we could do that. That's fine. Sometime down the road, we hope to have the ever-returning guest Garrett Brett back because he just went to the UK and won the whole darn thing.
Huh.
Let them win one of their championships, Garrett.
Yeah, well, you know, when you're the best, why bother holding back, really?
All right. I think that'll take everything out. Take everything out. I think that's everything we have for the night. God, I'm tired. Tom, as always, thank you so much for joining us. It was
Absolutely.
A really big pleasure having you.
Yeah, it was
Nice
fun being on. If you guys would like me in the future at some point, I'm willing to come back. You know, I have not been mistreated at all. So, you know, it's
We would
good.
hope to have both you and Nathan back just to watch this arguing the same point scenario.
Yeah, you could totally you could totally just have us both on at the same time. We'll just go at it right now. We'll be like Bill O'Reilly and what's his name? Oh, Mr.
John
Stewart. Yeah. So
I prefer Abbott and Costello, but I'll take what I can get.
We'd have to warn people ahead of time. That's going to be a long show, but I would love to. Just like sit
as
you
long as
down,
we
be
don't
like
talk
red
about
versus
WoW.
blue, go.
That's right.
What?
Who do they think I am? Elbow grease. But yeah, no, I said I would probably be Bill O'Reilly just because I'm taller, but I'm not that much taller.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So we'll end it on that note. Again, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me.
As always, guys, like the video, come to the Facebook, subscribe. Just subscribe to the channel, like the Facebook. We post stuff periodically on the Facebook. At some point, I'll get off my lazy butt and update the website. It's just been a very hectic month. And we will see you guys next week.